Welcome to another wasted hour of You and I, Unfiltered and Inspired, where I spend a good amount of time with a beautiful creative mind. We hope you'll have an awesome time with us. And you know, the way to support us is obviously to follow, subscribe, leave some information. If you're interested in being part of this podcast, please go ahead and leave us a message and we'll get right back to you. But for now, let's really enjoy this time with our new artist in this new episode. Okay. We are here for another episode of You and I, Unfiltered and Inspired. Behind the scene with my favorite artist in the Inland Empire, talking about real life, unscripted. I'm just throwing some questions out there and whatever comes back, all right? We're spending time together today with Wright. Hey.
Hey.
And he's going to talk to us about a lot of cool stuff. You'll see some of the art, obviously, and I invite you to come to the Eastside Art House where he comes most often to create his pieces so that you can discover a really, really original artist in the art house. So the thing with Jared is that we have a very interesting common past. We both grew up in Africa, speak a lot of different languages. We come from the same backgrounds, actually. Culturally, it was really interesting to meet him at the art house and kind of discover that we have very, very similar, even religious backgrounds and stuff like that. So what I would love for you to discover, and maybe the first thing that I would love for you to introduce, is how eclectic you are, because you're a writer and like an artist, obviously a traveler, and you speak several languages and all that stuff. So if you could give us a little bit of a quick background, that'd be awesome before I torture your brain.
First of all, thanks for the opportunity to chit chat. Happy to do this.
Yeah.
I was born in the United States in Massachusetts, and then before I was even a year old, my family moved to Rwanda in Africa.
Yeah.
I grew up there for 6 years. So that set the stage for being kind of an international person, I guess, although I didn't know what that was at the time. Then we moved back to the States when I was about 7 years old. Since then, I've lived in California and Texas, Tennessee. I've lived in Thailand, and I've lived in Honduras, visited Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, been all over the place.
Right.
You oversell me a little bit, though. I only speak English decently. Spanish,
but you're fluent
passively.
No, you are fluent. Stop it. And
I can
did
have
you
a
learn
conversation.
any dialect in Rwanda when you were a kid? Because I remember I did.
Yeah. So the
the
first non-English language that I learned was Rwanda, which is the language that's spoken there, and then French was their second language. So I learned a bit of that. My dad was a French speaker, and that's how we ended up in Rwanda in the first place.
Right, and he tells you that, but we have complete conversations in French. So
she does the conversing. I respond in French, sometimes English. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, growing as an international kid, to me, feel like it really helped me being super flexible with a lot of stuff. Flexible with people, especially because it was easy to relate to people's cultures and stuff like that. Do you feel like that traveling and that changing of culture and food and all that kind of helped you in life in different ways? What did it do to you to grow up like that as a kid?
For sure, it's given me both, I think, an appreciation for people of all kinds of cultures. It's given me a sense of curiosity.
Right.
And I think appreciating people who are different from myself, a lot of people who are very focused on themselves tend to be people that haven't been outside of their own community where they grew up.
Right.
And so I value having grown up all over the place and having lived all over the place. And I'm sure I still have a lot of the trappings of being a white male from North America and all that comes with that. But yeah, curiosity and love of people and cultures and foods and travel all comes with that, I think.
Yeah, and I can see it how in the way you relate with people of all sorts of backgrounds here in the art house, and even people who come in. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the other thing that comes with living in places all over the world is you recognize that people are beautiful everywhere. People are, there's a certain humanity that you find in any part of the world.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that in people who are very different from me in terms of their language and culture and stuff helps me not, I think, be afraid of newness or difference,
Yes.
and even to value and appreciate it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Can you talk about your writing?
I was a writer before I was an artist professionally. Okay. So I have been an editor, I've been a blogger, I have worked for news organizations and nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like, I did a master's degree in religion, and writing was a key component of my master's program. I'd love to someday write and illustrate picture books for kids as well.
Yeah, we talked about that.
I've got some pieces of that in the works. But yeah, it was one of my first loves, although I've been drawing all my life as well.
Okay, I was going to ask you. Yeah. But that's what came first.
In terms of profession, right? Art has been something that goes back as far as even before I have memories of it. My mom tells this kind of apocryphal story of me as a kid. She said, I drew a picture of our swing set out in the backyard when we lived in Rwanda. Uh-huh. And one of the other expatriate people that worked with us saw my picture and he said, hey, that's really good. It has perspective. I didn't know what perspective was. I just drew what I saw. So it's been something that's been there forever. And now I'm finally actually trying to give it a go in a professional sense.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this. But how come it wasn't the go-to career for you?
I'm not sure who or what discouraged me from trying to make a go at it earlier on in life. Mm. But there was some voice in my head, I don't know if it was parents or where, that it wasn't a viable profession. It was something that, people struggle doing. And they're like, get a real job, as many well-meaning people.
I talked about this before. You see that? Like, it's not a job. And yet, just like me, you're like coming into this midlife and you're like, you know what? I'm going to get back to that thing.
It's been persistent enough. It's been something that's been kind of in the back of my head enough that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try it. Here I am at age 40-something. Should I say how many 40s?
Sure,
I'm 44. And I'm 2 years into
age.
Trying to do this as a profession. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm a professional artist, but it is now part of my side hustle, my main hustle, all my hustles.
It's bleeding into all your hustles.
Revolve around creating stuff, yeah.
Tell me why you're saying I don't consider myself a professional artist.
Yeah, so when I think of a professional artist, I think of somebody who makes their primary living through art. Mm-hmm. I'm not there yet, just to be frank about where I'm at. I am not making a living that I could be independent and pay my bills. My wife is a nurse. She pays the bills primarily. Nursing is, all you out there, nursing is a good job. It's not for me though. It's not something that I could ever do. And I'm always inspired and awed by people who have those kinds of gifts. I don't.
But should we say, and this is where I'm going to start pushing you, should we say that being a professional artist is tied to the money? Like, aren't we a professional artist because this thing is coming out of us? Especially looking at your work, there's a very, very strong thread and signature already. Mm. Like, we can say that's a Wright, that's a Jared, because it's so very niche and awesome in its own way. So to me, you're a professional artist. You're working at selling that stuff, of course, and all that stuff, but that's your series. That's what you do.
And I suppose we could make
time to push it out.
No, you're making a fair point, and I think maybe it's a semantic game more than real categories that exist. I think I would describe artists in different ways. So there are hobbyists who do it for fun and as an outlet. Okay. There are people who do it full time. Yeah. Meaning that's how they spend most of their day. Yeah. And for me, just again, trying to categorize this neatly, people who are professionals are doing that as a job that helps them pay bills. I think that I'm still a part-time working on becoming a full-time artist because I have another day job that actually pays for some of my bills. But, yeah. So my goal is professional artist. Mm-hmm. And by some accounts, maybe I'm closer than I think I am.
Like full-time.
Yeah,
Let's say that. Full-time, right. that can pay all the bills.
But again, the goal, since it's something that I love and I want to do professionally, the goal is actually to make money. And unfortunately, the realities of life are it requires money. So yeah, that's one of my goals. Not the primary one, not the number one goal, but it is a goal.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the practice. You came in. Tell me how you came in to do what you do, like the specific, the little animals, furry animal, dapper looking and all that. So how did that come out to you?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what in my brain decided that was going to be the thing that I was going to focus on. I've always had an interest ever since becoming a parent in creating worlds of like whimsy and fun and imagination, but that also have elements of chaos and elements of real life. And I think sometimes it's easier maybe to express those kinds of big ideas that artists tend to have through imaginary worlds where animals are the primary actors, rather than the world of people, which can be very literal and sometimes confrontational because either they don't look like me or they're doing something that I don't like, but animals are kind of disarming in that way, and they're cute, and people like them. And dapper, I don't know, man. Why do they all have suits and hats and things like that, and bow ties?
From the 20s kind of stuff.
Yeah, from like the late 19th century, early 20th century. I'm not sure where that came from.
And he didn't listen to me. I told him to wear that hat. That eau de forme hat. And
Indeed, I have one. I'm still working on my dapper. I just bought a red velour. Yes, thank you. See, my French isn't as good as yours. Yeah. I have a nice jacket that I think will go nicely with my top hat. So putting it together.
Huh. Jared is tackling sticky subjects through fun stuff. So like the little animals, like he said, are disarming. And if you know, you know. That's what I love. There's several layers to the thing. You can see the little animals in their cute little situation with a broken car that fell in the water or whatever it is. But there's messages behind. And we have a show coming up November 30th at the Eastside Art House. And he has a piece that is going to be pretty provocative. But you will know if you really understand some of the symbols and messages that are behind this funky, fun animal and the situation that's around. So I enjoyed that political aspect of your work. Can you talk to me about that? Because it's a bit of, how can I say this? Not a rebel look about life, but I don't know. Sarcastic. I feel like you have a sarcastic look at politics and all that stuff, and that's kind of sipping into your work.
It's a weird time to be an artist politically because of the tensions here in the United States and the way that the election that has just happened has made people really antagonistic. There's a lot of animosity, and there's a lot of really problematic things going on. And so how as an artist do you even begin to approach those kinds of big subjects?
Right.
I feel like if you're very head on and just be like, screw this guy or screw that person, or people immediately have filters that can block that stuff out. We're very good at just tuning out contrary messages that we don't like. On the other hand, when it's a character that has elements of cuteness and fun, and yet there's something amiss when you look a little closer, it starts speaking, I think, to some of these realities that are going on in ways that might kind of, I imagine, I hope, go around some of people's defenses and allow them to wonder what's happening in the world via fairly disarming, cute bears in top hats. Now, maybe I'm over-imagining how effective that kind of thing really is. Maybe it's not as deep or profound as I wish it were. And that's one of the challenges, right? Just to be able to say something through art and to find means of doing it effectively. I still am figuring that out.
But it's got to be effective for you. At the end of the day, it's coming out of you. It's for you. You're not painting for the public. You're painting to say, this bothers me.
Yeah.
I really didn't like this political atmosphere, or the way this person or politician is saying this is ridiculous, but you say that through, your images and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it's for you. It's to express yourself.
There is an autobiographical component to art, I think. Even abstract art art of all forms, I think, because it's an outgrowth of somebody's mind and mental process, says something about what's in their head. And that's for sure true about my art. It is a reflection of what's in my head and how I'm responding to the world events and things like that.
Okay. All right. So what gives you joy in this practice, in what you make?
Art is never just about creating cute stuff. It's always about expression, connection. I think those are two of the most important things about the art practice for me. So expressing myself brings me a level of satisfaction for sure.
Right.
And then interacting with people because of it, fellow artists, public, anybody who has something to say. I think there's a joyfulness that comes with like interaction that art brings.
Yeah. And what bothers you in your practice, or what's hard?
Just being real. I think, having certain ideas in my head that I want to convey visually, and still I feel like there are things that my brain can't put onto canvas or pieces of wood the way that I want to. So the bottom line is just becoming a more skilled artist, and for me, that's just more time doing it.
More time doing it. So right now, what frustrates you is that you have a lot of ideas and they don't necessarily transpire on your canvas or your wood. By the way, he's working with wood. He's doing a lot of woodwork and carving and cutting and all that.
But yeah, that is a frustration. And I think for every artist, when you feel like you're not able to express what you want to express exactly how you'd like to, there is, and I tend to be perfectionistic, so that doesn't help my case. I want it to be just so, and when it's not. I had a conversation with a friend here at the art house just yesterday, Andrea Lopez, and she was encouraging gently the idea of just letting go of some of the expectation of what it should be and letting it be what it wants to be or what it evolves into. That was helpful.
Good. That's why we're here, right? We're in the group of other artists that are all doing something completely different, and their perspectives sometimes have helped me a lot.
Yeah.
To be like, unlock my brain or unlock my frustration at something I can't get done.
Yeah, this creative community is immensely helpful that way, for sure.
Yeah. Where do you want to... This might be hard to answer because I don't think I can even answer this myself. But where do you want your practice to go? Like, where do you see yourself, like, say, in 10 years?
Yeah. And it's hard to imagine that right now because so much of my life currently revolves around my 2 kids and parenting and those kinds of responsibilities. So seeing a life where they are grown up and doing their own thing. In that amount of time, I'd love to have a fully fledged practice where I am doing what I talked about, being a professional, selling pieces, and I think, I'd love to have some books published out in the market in the world, leveling up some of these things that I've begun the last year or so.
Yeah. Multi creativity, like just...
Yeah, I think every artist at some level is a multidisciplinary artist. We dabble in all kinds of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've heard all sorts of stuff like music, and people are really creative in all these other aspects.
I would love to actually create original songs and lyrics and make videos with them, with my characters animating them. That's another kind of side hustle.
Are you a musician?
I wouldn't call myself a musician because I don't do music, but I am competent at writing lyrics and...
Jared kills me because he's so humble. I wouldn't call myself a musician, but I can write lyrics.
Because there are musicians who that's what they do. That's not what I do, but I like it. I enjoy it, and
you can actually.
I can.
You have the skills.
Reasonably, So yeah, that's another thing I'd love to do sometime within the next 10 years for sure. Maybe sooner rather than later.
So maybe your characters could be turned into, I don't know, anime
music
with your music.
I would love to animate some of these characters, and I know nothing about animation. So that's one of the areas in art that I'm totally deficient.
The tech stuff.
Yeah, when it comes to I could do stop motion, very primitive and crude stop motion. It takes forever.
Yeah.
That stuff is fun at some level, but yeah, that's not my, I wish it were.
It could though, because we have people here who actually have all those.
Yeah, when I go back to school, it's going to be for animation.
When I go back to school, you want to throw yourself back to school?
All right, we're going to add that to the 10-year bucket list. Going back. No, I'd love to improve my art practice with some of these tools that I never have picked up. Animation being one of them.
So do you feel like, and this is one thing I like to address with my artists, is do you feel like you need to add some tech to your practice? And the second part of the question, is that important? Because you're about to build a business. So let's talk about business in a minute, but like, do you think you have to add tech, like in this climate and all that stuff, for your practice? Do you think it's gonna help?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. The climate is that there are a lot of really talented artists, and being an artist professionally is a very competitive thing because the technology that's available has made it more accessible to more people. And so the other part of the question is, would tech help? And the answer for sure is yes. Like, I could imagine using, for instance, laser cutters to help me cut out my characters more efficiently,
Because right now you're doing it by hand.
I'm using saws, and my sawing is so-so, you know.
Okay.
But laser cutters are way more accurate and quick. And so to then create these characters, to cut them out quickly, to then be able to paint them, it improves my workflow and my process. And a lot of tech does that. It improves workflow, process.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about business? Because you need to build a business around all of this. How do you feel? Do you feel like you're capable? Do you feel like you have most of the pieces in place, or is there things that you still need to develop and all that?
Straight up, that part scares me. I have no business sense. I was born without the business gene.
You don't know that until you really get started with it, though.
So what I mean is, I don't know anything about accounting, really. I don't know anything about like managing finances, making investments, you know. That world is foreign to me. And so when it comes to like, what if I were to lease a space to, you know, house my collection or whatever? I just haven't done it before. And so I think this is an area where I'm happy to outsource once I have enough money to do it to people who are competent. Absolutely. It's not my first love either. I would feel pretty bummed if I spent most of my time doing those kinds of processes. But I recognize a lot of working artists have to do that.
We have to.
To be an artist requires knowing how to do web management and knowing how to
market yourself.
Marketing.
And how to find clientele and all of that. And it's the same thing for me. I'm a professor. I've been in the psychology field and all that stuff before starting, you know, really being serious about this practice in like what I was 40, 41. And but I'm realizing I can't do this without a business structure. So now I have a business structure, I have the studio and all that stuff, but I had to learn everything from scratch. I've not, you know, been through business school or any of that. Now, 4 years into it, I'm starting to finally outsource. This awesome guy behind the camera, Jay, Video Cartel, is now taking over, you know, all of our media and all that, because I was doing this myself and it was trash.
And I think knowing when to connect with other competent professionals and having the resources to do it is a key part of building an art practice. I don't know how to do taxes as a sole proprietor.
But you don't really have to. But it's true that you really have to think of your whole thing as this needs to be a solid entity, because then people trust it more also, you know, for like grants or residencies and all that stuff. There's some paperwork that you have to have in place. But once you have that, and, you know, it takes the time that it takes to outsource and to have other people deal with. Like, I'm not a tax person.
Right.
I have an accountant now and all that stuff, but it took a minute. I had to do everything by myself, and I made big mistakes.
Yeah. I never went to art school, so that's one of my deficiencies. I'm self-taught, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it's some artist path. Is it a
deficiency or...?
The deficiency is that I feel like I never got some of the professional tools that art school provides. And my critique of my knowledge of art school, having never been, is that they don't teach stuff like how to be a business person in the art market. I don't think. I've never heard of an art school that's like...
now, but I don't think it was.
Hopefully they're catching up, and because that's one of the realities. You got to be a business person too, I guess.
I mean, it's a common thread in our conversations with artists. They all realize, like, I can't do this really without social media to sell my stuff.
Right.
You know, where do I find outlets to put out my art and all that stuff? How do I sell? How do I find clients? How do I find, I don't know.
So for instance, to answer some of those questions for myself, next year I'm contemplating being a vendor here in Riverside at the Art Walk.
Yes.
And interfacing with the public a lot more so that I can start, you know, developing a clientele. Because right now, maybe a couple of people find me on Instagram, maybe they don't. Maybe some people see my stuff at the show, probably they don't. So like, how do you actually interact with the public and get out there in front of people? I'm gonna try my hand at doing it face to face.
And the art walk is a good one for that, because the whole city comes out. We can talk about it. I spent a lot of time. I spent the first 2 or 3 years doing the art walk.
I'm making a mental list of things I'm gonna pick your brain about. Taxes is one, accounting, and how to be a vendor at Art Walk,
And a lot of people here know, like, we can definitely, like, brief you on the skinny and stuff. But it's like it's an organic part of things to feel finally like you're a professional artist, because, you know, I'm mad at you for not feeling that, but I understand that you're thinking there's a lot of different pieces that need to be in place for you to feel like this is no more a hobby.
Right.
It's actually, you know.
And so in addition to like the sense that I'm actually a real artist because I'm now selling my art to the public, interacting with people is just part of who I am as a creator. I love social interaction, and part of the joy for me does, like I said, come from having people respond to my art and the conversations and the interactions that creates. I love that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if we could just do that, paint and talk to people, that would be great.
If money were no object.
Yeah, I mean, I'm complaining all the time that I don't have the time to just paint. All I want to do is leave me alone, let me work on my series and all. But you have all these other things to do, right? I'm part of like business chambers, and you have to go to the meetings and meet people and you know, create collaborations and relationships, and there's a lot of that professional thing.
You know, I hear these stories about these artists who cloistered themselves off in some New England barn and just painted. And I'm like, that must have been nice back in whatever era that was. That's not the reality today.
Reality.
And I'm a parent, so like I said, and it's the truth that a lot of my life revolves around that. So time is always an issue. Yeah. Time management and like feeling like there's enough time to create what I want to create.
And being, you know what I feel? I feel taken out of my flow. Because like I start something and it's like, gotta go pick up somebody, gotta, you know, go to that meeting, gotta interact with that business.
Yeah, and those necessary, I would call them necessary intrusions into our time does disrupt. When you get into a flow state and you're working and you're vibing and it's going well, and then something cuts that off, it's hard to recapture the magic, like to get back into that.
And that's exactly what happened to you last night, right?
I had to go home and take my kids to Muay Thai after dinner and then come back to the studio and try to work again, and my brain was not turned back on.
It was not turning back on. What does being in the zone mean to you?
That feels, at this stage of my practice, that feels kind of elusive still.
Okay.
But I've experienced bits and pieces of that where I will be painting and I'm like, whoa, this is working. It's going well. I like my idea of what this should be is translating into what becomes.
Right.
So that's the closest I can give you in terms of what flow state looks like when I'm actually like, it's coming through my brain onto the medium.
Yeah, and you don't really see time pass.
Yeah, no, it's being locked in the zone, and stuff, those other intrusions we just talked about don't enter my head. It's just kind of like being present with my creative process. You know, I think one of the places I'm at right now is like, I feel like there's never been a time where being an artist is more important in terms of like conveying important things. I've had some of my most poignant moments through pieces of art or works of art. For instance, like going to see a Broadway performance of The Color Purple or a show called Next to Normal, these kind of stories that people create that move you to your core, bring you to tears, connect with something in your life. And I think this time in American history and world history, like being an artist has never been more important for those kinds of things. For transcending the kind of vitriol that we all live with and working around some of people's biases and speaking to them on an emotional and a deep level. I think artists are well situated to do that kind of thing. This is a good time for the arts.
Okay, I like that. And the world wouldn't exist without it, so.
I mean, you look around and everything that civilization entails has art baked into it, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. Not to, you know. But it does highlight the value of the arts writ large, right? Like all kinds of arts. It infiltrates every part of society and culture, and it's who we are as human beings, I think.
If you couldn't be an artist, what would happen to you?
Yeah, I feel like without creativity and without some sort of an outlet, a piece of my soul dies and shrivels up. So I'm glad that I have it, you know, because I lived in that shriveled up place for a while before I started my practice. I was unhappy with my previous iterations of my professional lives, and there was a piece of my soul that wasn't thriving and wasn't alive, and so art has given me that. And I feel like if I didn't have art now, I'd be a little more shriveled up inside.
Shriveled up.
A little
That's
more
what I felt.
decrepit.
Yeah, I felt the same thing. And allowing myself to give myself that space to put my freaking brush to the, to the canvas. I actually started by oil pastel.
Oh.
I started making big oil pastel portrait, like it was coming from an angry place, and I was like, like I was pressing these oil pastels on the paper, on the canvas, making a lot of like texture and just like,
Yeah, and pastels are so responsive in terms of like it's almost like sculpting because they actually like leave little clumps and lumps and textures.
Yes.
And so, you can press hard and you can scratch in it. That's a great outlet.
I did this maybe like a full night once.
Wow.
A few years back, and I woke up in the morning, I was like, I didn't know I had this in me anymore because I had not practiced for like 15 years. Because I was told, that's not a job and we're not gonna do that. And that was a revelation. So I was suddenly like, okay, this is actually in me and I can actually start exploring it. That was
the metaphor
strange.
of a candle, it feels a little bit hokey.
Okay.
But it feels apt as well in the sense that like candles do so many things. They provide warmth and illumination and all of those things. And they're also fragile. They can be blown out or snuffed out, or, people lick their fingers and do it because they're tough and they don't care about burning their fingers. But there's so many things that put candles out, and the metaphor of like reigniting it and letting that light and warmth back into the world feels very much like the process you're describing in a metaphoric sense.
And now you feel all warm and fuzzy inside because you give yourself that opportunity to paint.
Yeah, it really does do something that like kind of brightens a dark place, at least in our brains and in our souls. This is the feeling of being an artist, I think.
But, when we have our shows or whatnot, and people are like, wow, so I feel like that light that's inside of us and just living rent-free in our brain is being somehow put into another person's soul, right? It's like, I love this. I had this older gentleman who saw a piece and he was like, you made me cry today. I was like, oh. But that piece made me cry. So it's like whatever was put in there was, that seed just was also put into that person. And when you see them having so much fun looking at your little characters and all that stuff, that's it. You're transferring that candle light into them.
There's two ways in which I kind of believe in magic. One is like, how in the world did people translate voices into like a piece of wax, and when there's a needle on it, You can recreate the voice. That's magic. I don't care what anybody says. And the other kind of magic, though, is when you hold out your candle and somebody else has their candle there and your light lights theirs. That's magic as far as I'm concerned.
So we do that with art.
It feels that way. The scenario you described was really giving that man the fire that you have.
That has inside, yeah.
I feel like I'm going to overextend this metaphor real quickly, but
Okay.
It feels that way, doesn't it, though?
I think it's a good spot to stop. And so when we do like this interview, to me is sharing that light, right? We are helping those who are watching to realize what light is in you, what does it look like, what ignites you. And you shared some of that with me, so that makes me happy. And then other people are gonna see this interview now and know, okay, what's the candlelight in Jared, and how does it work, and where does it come from, and that's what I wanted. So I want to thank you for like spending the time to kind of open up your mind and your ideas and your fear and your vulnerabilities with us. That's the whole goal, fam. So we're gonna give you all of Jared's information, right? We want you to follow his Instagram, his progress, website and all that stuff.
Does that mean I need to build one?
You need to build a website.
Business, I forgot it. There it is again.
You do, right? Follow his, progress as a business owner and as a creative. He'll be around, obviously, the East Side Art House and the Inland Empire. We're going to be watching you creating your books. I'm not putting any pressure, but I'm putting a pressure because it's going to be awesome. So I really can't wait for you to also see all the videos and the pictures and the art and really enjoy that. So, share some of Jared's light. Cool?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. So how was that? We hope you have an awesome time with us. And remember to follow, like, and subscribe, comment, leave messages. We really, really enjoy, communicating with the community. So be with us, stay with us, and stay tuned for the next episode.